Today we're going to be talking about probably one of the most misunderstood and least explained aspects of One Punch Man, and that thing is the power system that rules over the One Punch Man world. Every major battle shonen has one, whether it's chakra from Naruto, quirks from My Hero Academia, or cursed energy from JJK. One Punch Man is no different. However, it might be a little bit more nuanced than you think, but that's alright because hopefully by the end of this video, you'll have a much better understanding of the power system that exists in One Punch Man. But before we get into the nitty gritty of everything, if you guys enjoy One Punch Man and One Punch Man related content, then stop right there. You don't need to go anywhere else because I post One Punch Man content multiple times a week, whether it's theory videos, general discussions, or chapter reviews. You're going to want to make sure to be subscribed with notifications on so you can get regular injections of One Punch Man dopamine every single week. But alright, let's get right into it. So the best place to start in understanding the power system of One Punch Man is fully understanding the existence of the Limiter. The Limiter was first introduced in chapter 89 of the manga, where Dr. Genus explains to Zombie Man that Saitama had removed his. This leads Zombie Man to question what a Limiter even is, which then leads Dr. Genus to go on to explain that no matter how much an organism strives, there are limits to its growth. An overabundance of strength is a burden to its bearer, giving rise to complications. Those who become monsters shed their original selves and rage out of control. For that reason, God has designed each creature to grow within parameters that allow for survival and the preservation of reason. And the mechanism for controlling that growth is called the Limiter. So in a nutshell, think of the Limiter as a phenomena that actually exists in real life, where technically our bodies are able to do more than they currently can. They're able to lift more weight or run faster, things like that, but our brains are wired to prevent us from overexerting our bodies, and this is to prevent us damaging ourselves, like breaking our bones or tearing our muscles by pushing ourselves too hard. The Limiter in One Punch Man works in very much the same way, where every individual person has this cap on the potential that they can reach, the things that they can do, to avoid destroying their bodies or turning into ravenous monsters. Even the heroes that exist in the One Punch Man world also contain limiters. I know it's kind of hard to believe this, seeing as how there's heroes like Super Alloy Darkshine and Pig God who truly push the boundaries of what the human body can do. But both of them, along with every other hero that we see in the manga, has a limiter placed on them. The reason they seem so superhuman and so different from your average person is because they were people that were born with this inherent potential. This is something that existed within the parameters of the limiter placed on them, and through sheer effort or training or modifications, heroes are able to reach these superhuman or straight up monster-like levels of power because they quite literally push themselves to their absolute limit. Now, the insane abilities that these heroes have might seem monster-like, but they are distinctly different from what monsters actually are in the One Punch Man world. Because Dr. Genus goes on to explain that when human beings become monsters, there's an explosion of frustration resulting from unsatisfied desires and the urge to transform. Driven by destructive behaviors and psychological complexes, the individual's past circumstances and other factors may give rise to cellular abnormalities and spontaneous mutation, or such unnatural changes may come about through the power of science due to research such as my own. So essentially what Dr. Genus is saying here is that monsterization is a result of a mutation to a human's body. They still retain their limiters, but their cells literally mutate to become a whole different being, with potentially a higher ceiling but still has a limiter intact. The major difference between heroes and monsters is that heroes obtain their inhuman level of power through sheer will and really no negative aspects to it. Whereas with people that turn into monsters, those who are driven by hatred and extremely negative emotions are much more susceptible to actually becoming monsters, where they also have these inhuman abilities, but that's because they're actually inhuman. Heroes are still human beings that could do extraordinary things, while monsters are certainly not human beings who can also do extraordinary things. And we see that with monsters in the One Punch Man world, they're almost always evil and malicious because those were the overwhelming emotions that made them transform in the first place. And we see that with a lot of monsters, the thing that they were kind of obsessing over or the source of their frustration is made very apparent with the abilities that they have. Now, some argue that the transformations that heroes go under to obtain these insane levels of power and general abilities is also due to some form of monsterization. But in my personal opinion, I think the type of transformation that heroes and generally good people in the One Punch Man world is different than actual monsterization, because we have to remember that monsterization has malicious intent and extremely negative emotions tied to it. Whereas obviously with Saitama's journey to becoming the strongest hero, there was no real malicious intent with it. There were no extremely negative emotions. He was actually driven by a very positive thing, which is to become a hero that can defeat any enemy with just one punch. So that's why I personally believe that there are two forms of transformation in the One Punch Man world. One being a more general, like different kind of metamorphosis versus a monsterization, which obviously turns the individual into a monster. It makes them completely give up their humanity. It's kind of the idea where if you still retain your human heart and your general humanity, then any transformation that you'll undergo will not result in monsterization. Now, there's still a few more mysterious aspects to the limiter that is already pretty mysterious in itself. Like, for example, we don't know exactly if a limiter has some kind of like physical form or is present in a certain area of the body, like the brain or something. Or if it's just something like gravity where you can't see it, you can't touch it, but you just know that it's there, you know that it exists. And aside from that, although Dr. Genus explains that limiters and monsterization really only occurs in living things, that doesn't really explain the existence of seemingly sentient objects in the One Punch Man world, like the Sunblade that we were recently introduced to that Atomic Samurai received from Nichiren, or Tank Top Master's tank top that was able to snap back to his body so hard that it restarted his heart. That kind of raises the question, well, if it's possible that an object can monsterize, is monsterization and the existence of a limiter not something that kind of coincide with each other? They can exist in separate situations. I think that's a pretty interesting question, and I hope that One and Murata kind of elaborate on this as the story goes along, and we might get a little bit more explanation to this once we get more into that, Sunblade and Moonblade stuff with Atomic Samurai farther down the line. Now, another little subcategory of monsters are monsters like Boros or Deep Sea King, who are natural born monsters who were never humans and were just born as these inhuman beings. Now, the only real outliers to this general rule is the existence of espers, and I for one think that espers have a very real importance to the story, and I go into more detail about this in one of the other videos I made earlier last week, which I'll leave in the description below if you guys are interested in that. But as we know, espers like Tatsumaki, Fubuki, Gearspur, Psychos, those kinds of espers were born with their abilities. Much like how people are born geniuses, they kind of have this makeup already within them from the jump. Now, the Monster Association arc introduced a new way for monsters to be created through the form of ingesting monster cells. However, it still falls under the parameters of the limiter because we see that those who ingest monster cells have their power scaled based on what they're already capable of, and it kind of just bypasses the need for a natural mutation to occur. Also, seeing how monsters are somehow connected to God in some way, it might be possible that God has something to do with the existence of monsters to begin with, or the existence of the limiter. But hey, that's a theory for a whole different video. But as for this one, if you guys enjoyed it, please make sure to like, and let me know in the comments below what you think about the limiter in the One Punch Man world. What do you think of the power system in general? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let me know in the comments what you think. But that'll do it for this one, guys. I'll see you in the next video.